Hey everybody, welcome to a quick class on mountain pose. This is tadasana for beginners, and tadasana or mountain pose is, I think, like the perfect yoga pose because it's a pose that you can do publicly and no one will look at you like you're a weirdo, especially if you do it well. So if you do mountain pose too uptight, people are totally going to look at you like you're a weirdo because you'll be like this. And that's no kind of way to stand around in public. So we're going to go through some tips today to help you build a really strong, grounded mountain posture that's actually really soft and relaxed at the same time. So let's just get cooking. I think there's actually a lot of stuff to go through, even though it's just standing there, like it's just standing there. There's a lot that goes into it. Mountain pose always starts at the ground, and it makes sense. Mountains are actually part of the ground. Mountains are weird that way, actually, if you think about it, because they go way, way up high, but it's not like they're on the ground. They are the ground. And so your mountain pose actually should become sort of part of the ground. Now, in terms of aligning your feet, simple little tip for you. If you're not already standing, please do. Come on up. Line your feet up underneath your hips. And so what I would suggest to you is to find the inside edge of your hip, which is here, and the outside edge of your hip, which is here, and then find the spot in between those 2 points. So you're going to find sort of the center of the hip joint, and then draw lines straight down from the center of the hip joint. Those should go right through the centers of your knees. Those should go straight down to the centers of your ankles. So that means in a class of like 20 people, you're going to have 20 different stances because there will be 20 different pelvises in there. Now those lines that went down from your hips through the knees to the ankles, don't stop there. If you imagine like there was a mirror set up in your ankles, so there's like a laser light that goes down from the hips. If that bounced off your ankle mirrors and those lines went forward, those lines should be parallel with one another. So it's not so much lining up like the inside edges of the feet or the outside edges of the feet or lining up the toes. You really want to try to align the center of the ankles. Once you get that, and to be honest with you, sometimes it takes a moment, and it's worth taking a moment. But once you get that, work on using your toes like little seismographs. So the toes should be used like sensitive instruments where they're really sort of stretching out in space, and you're using them to feel little shifts and adjustments in weight and how your body sort of stabilizes itself. And so the tendency sometimes is to stretch the toes out and then grip them down. Try to stretch the toes out, but keep them light, or as light as possible anyway. Now in terms of like, if the toes don't press down, what does? It should be the bones of your feet. So you want all the bony parts, just primarily the toe mounds and the heels, really kind of sinking down into your mat. And then the fleshy parts, mostly the soles of the feet, should be kind of moving upwards and away from the mat. So if you just think for a moment, take the bones down, but move the flesh up. If you're on a squishy yoga mat, sometimes you can't feel this quite as well. On a thinner sticky mat or right on the floor, when the bones of the feet press down and the arches lift up, you can actually feel like a bit of a cool breeze going underneath your foot. So I can't feel the breeze right now because the mat's a little bit thick and I'm sinking into it. But if I were to step up to here, when I lift the arches of the feet, I can actually feel the air coming underneath them. And it's like a bed, right? If the mattress is right on the floor, you don't get good air circulation and things get a little bit stagnant. So it's nice to have that feeling of fresh air underneath your feet. Now, take in particular the big toe mound and push that down. So not the big toe itself, but the big toe mound. Get that nice and heavy, and then imagine keeping that anchored down, that you shift weight over to the outside edge of the ankle. So if you pull weight to the outer ankle and let the big toe mound lift, you'll end up rolling out on your ankles. So if you keep the big toe mound down and then press down into the the outer ankle, what will happen is you get this nice lift happening in the inner arch. And as the inner arch comes up like that, it's really helping you to get that little bit of wind tunnel effect underneath your feet. You should notice when your ankles turn out that the shins will follow. So the shins actually turn out to the sides a little bit as well. This is really working on a issue that I notice a lot in students, where the inner ankles and the shins both tend to kind of fall inwards. And this is something that you bump into in almost every standing posture, and it really begins in mountain pose. So again, you can practice this like all day, every day. You can do this in line at the bank or at Starbucks or whatever. You know, anywhere you're going to get a cup of coffee, anywhere you're just standing around in line, you can be working on getting that inner ankle lift. Now, as the shins go out, the tendency is for the thighs to start to follow, and that will make you stand with your butt kind of tight. So you don't want to be tight-butted in mountain pose. So as the shins go out, think about taking the inner thighs and actually rotating those back. So if you really go hard with the inner thighs, you'll end up pulling the shins and the ankles in. So keep the shins and ankles going out, but then move the groins in and back. And you should notice it actually makes your butt stick out a bit more. And occasionally when you do that, when your butt sticks out, you'll get like a little bit of tension in your lower back. And that's enough to make people think that they're sticking their butt out too much, that they should sort of press their tailbone down or something like that. Instead of adjusting the hips, let your butt go back and adjust from the ribs instead. So create some space in the low back by taking your ribs and letting those kind of soften down. It's an odd one for like yoga people because we spend so much time being concerned that we're like slouching, and nobody wants to be like a slouchy yogi, right? So everybody gets this way in mountain pose. And so the instruction to take your ribs down really feels like you're slouching a bit. It feels wrong somehow. The fact is your upper back curves forward. So the thoracic spine has a kyphotic curve. It rolls towards the front. And so that is actually a natural position for your upper back. It really only becomes a problem if your lower back is flat. So if the lower back is flat and then you round by taking the ribs down, now you've got this sort of like super slouchy position, right? If the hips go back though, even if the torso's curving a bit towards the front because the ribs are coming in, you're still gonna be upright. In terms of the shoulders, the tendency is usually that the shoulders kind of get pushed backwards, almost as though I'm trying to get that same little breath of fresh air into my armpits. So instead of taking the shoulders back, think instead about the last time you were on a really crowded flight and you get the person next to you that's like trying to steal your armrest. So what you want to do in that instance is really try to broaden outwards as much as possible. So think about taking up space from side to side. So the shoulders actually sort of, instead of squeezing backwards, which would actually make you narrower from side to side, think about pressing outwards with the shoulders. And typically when you do that, you'll notice the elbows sort of drift a little out and away from your hips, which is a really nice feeling. Again, it opens up the shoulders. So this instruction that you might have come across to do mountain pose as though you're holding bags of groceries was designed to get you to release the traps by not having the shoulders up like this. But really what it ends up doing is makes you look like you've been shot out of a cannon. So try to get more of a sense of softness in the upper body. The strength in the posture comes from the hips down. So it's in the feet and in the shins and in the thighs. That's where you get this feeling of like stability and power. The upper body, shoulders included, should have this sense of lightness to it, expansiveness. Now last little bit, the neck. Think about the last time you were at a concert and somebody tall was standing in front of you and you wanted to see the stage. That's all you have to do is just think of that, honestly. Just imagine yourself in that scenario and you will naturally just raise the level of your gaze. Lifting your chin up wouldn't help because the stage is not up in the sky. Taking the chin down certainly wouldn't help. So it's just a sense of lifting the gaze upwards. Last little nugget I'll put on this is if you find your hard palate with your tongue It's really quite simple, actually. Just stick your tongue upwards. If you find the back of your teeth first, and then slide your tongue back. Your hard palate is like a dome, and right up at the top of the dome, it's relatively flat. I can't talk while I'm doing it, so, but if you find that spot, that should be parallel with the ceiling. So find the top of the hard palate, and then just parallelize that with the ceiling. I don't know if parallelize is a word or not, but let's just go with it. It's a word. So get that. Now, think about this for a moment. Feet heavy, shins out, groins in, ribs down, shoulders broad, neck long, top of the mouth parallel with the ceiling. There's mountain pose. Now, just for fun, let go of that for a moment. Just like pull the plug. Notice like what your tendency is. When you pulled the plug and stopped doing mountain pose, what kinds of things happened? So did one knee go forward? Did a hip kick out to the side? Did you suddenly get a cigarette? So just notice sort of what your tendencies are, and then you have a better idea of naturally where you're going to head when you're just standing around doing nothing. So rather than rolling out a yoga mat and deciding now I'm going to do yoga, next time you find yourself just standing, think down to the feet, have a look at the hips, right? Stretch out the toes, get strong with the feet, get stability in the lower body, lightness, lifting in the upper body, broadness across the shoulders. Easy, relaxed mountain pose. Yeah? Yeah, you can't see, but they're nodding. All right, thanks a lot. Remember to practice lots. There's plenty of opportunities. All right? Namaste.